Welcome back. We are now looking at GAM7, not GAM8v, not GAM, just GAM7 on macOS. So what I've done, a couple of things, is I have logged in over here on Safari into the admin console. I have logged into, well, I've opened up the GAM7 instructions, and I have opened up a terminal on the right-hand side here. So let's just go a little bit larger on the terminal. Okay. So, as I discussed in the introduction, GAM8v, XCD3, and GAM are now merged into one. They are GAM7. So if you've set up GAM on your side before and you want to upgrade, there is a nice little instruction here on how to upgrade from legacy GAM to GAM7 or from GAM8v, XCD3 to GAM7. So both of those, please go and read them. But we're now going to install GAM7 from scratch on your Mac computer. So it says here how to install GAM. So if we go in here, we've got a couple of options here. We've got downloads and installs, which is going to take you through to various downloads and installs, Linux and macOS and Google Cloud Shell, Windows and GAM configuration. So if you haven't seen the Windows one and you'd like to get your GAM on Windows or Linux, please jump through to the other lessons. But otherwise, we are going to go to macOS here. So I'm going to click on that one, and it doesn't go anywhere. So that was really exciting. What it's going to do here is saying we're going to be playing around with the admin at domain as the thing to get it set up. What my suggestion is that you open up a text editor on your Mac, just so that when you are playing with the various commands, what you can do is you can actually paste it inside here, edit it, and then paste it into a terminal. That's just the way I do it. If you want to do it your own way, paste it into VS Code, whatever you want to do, absolutely cool. Okay. So in these examples, the home folder is shown as users admin, and according to yours, you must see what you're actually going to look at. So if I'm going to look at this one, I'll do pwd, which basically says, what is the local path that I am in? And I go to that. It says I'm in users Paul Auger. So because that is how it's going to be looking at, if I copy this and paste that in here, that's going to be something I just need to keep in mind, because if it's going to be users admin.gam or whatever it is, it's not going to be exactly the same as the path. So please make sure that you know what yours is. And if you want, you can type pwd to get yours into the terminal. Okay. So it says here, this assumes that GAM7 has been installed into users admin bin GAM7. If you install into any other directory, please play around with that. So we are going to go into downloads and installs at the top here. These are all the install commands for Linux or Linux, macOS, Google Cloud, Raspberry, and Chrome OS. If we're going to look at this, we are going to put this inside this default home folder and bin. So all I'm going to do is copy that. Now, if you want to install it in a different path, you can actually do this and you can put a path in there. If you want to install it to the latest version and you don't want to create a project or authorizations, then go with this command over here. Update the latest versions, do not create a project, specify a path. You can do all of that. But because we're going to start at the beginning and end at the end, we're going to go there. So I'm going to push this in here and I'm going to say paste. So that's going to be the first one. It's going to put into my home folder bin. So if I go into this and push enter, it says, there's a problem. Now, depending on whether or not you've actually got this set up on yours, this might not be a problem for yours. But basically it's saying that because this is a brand new version of Mac that I've got, this is actually a virtual machine that I'm running on here, it says that the Python 3 command requires the command line developers tools. So I'm going to say install, I'm going to say agree, and now depending on the speed of your internet and of your computer, it might take a bit of time. I'm really hoping it doesn't take 24 hours and 54 minutes. But if I change my shirt, I'll be back tomorrow. So fortunately, it's still the same day. It does say the software was installed now. It went from 24 hours down to about 5 minutes. And it's also the problem with starting from scratch. And it's also the problem with having a VM. It's not as fast as having it on your native machine. Anyway, so let's push done now. And let's go up. And let's try that again. Now, remember that in the instruction it says, please make note of where it's actually extracting it to. So mine's going to users Paul Auger and then bin. Okay, so it says it's finished extracting that. It's adding the gam alias to the profile file and the gam alias to the profile file over here. So we're going to look at those just now and see what they actually do. But can you run a full browser on this machine? Yes, for macOS, no for Linux if you SSH into this machine. So we're actually not SSHing into this machine. And if you don't know what an SSH, it's I don't know. No, it's not. So like it's when you access remotely. But anyway, we are going to push a Y for yes and push enter. And it says GAM is now installed. Are you ready to set up a Google API project for GAM? I'm going to say Y again and push enter and enter your Google Workspace admin email. So I'm going to go back here. Copy that. Paste that in there. Push enter. Cool bananas. Okay, so it says that GAM is installed, and we're going to do this as the GAM project. Now, if you're following along, if you go over here, and let's just go back here. If you've done the Windows one and it says you're going to sort of like start a project, the Mac one and the Linux one happen a little bit differently. Okay, so it says over here, we are in a certain place and we sort of like we've done this and it assumes that it's been installed there. If you install GAM7 in another directory, obviously know about that. It wants to now look at this configuration directory and add the following lines and add the following lines to your PowerShell, to your shell, and then issue these commands and everything like that. And then set a working directory and then set aliases and then set a symlink and then initialize GAM7. Okay. So we need to actually now look at this. We're going to stop here. We're going to come back to this, but we're going to make sure that we've actually got all this other stuff first. Okay. So we're going to go and we're going to say we're going to make this directory. So if I click on that and then go into my text, paste that in there, let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay, we are going to make sure that we have got this, copy that, and we're going to say users, and we're going to paste that in there. I'm going to take away this over here. I'm going to take this away over here. Okay, so it says that what we're going to do is we're going to go into this particular folder, and that's actually going to be this particular folder over here. And then we're going to say make directory. So let's now open a new terminal. If you've got your terminal, you can right click on it and say new window. Let's make this a bit larger and bring this over here. So we're going to go into this. So if we're on users Paul Auger, and if I go and say pwd again, I am in users Paul Auger. So I'm going to copy this and say make directory -p users Paul Auger gam config. So now, you know, I don't like to just run commands and you not see what's happening. So if I go ls, which is a list of the directories that are in this here, we've got a bin, which if we go into cd bin here and we go in ls inside there, you see there's gam7. So if I go into cd gam7 and then go into that and list that one, you'll see there's a whole lot of stuff inside there. Okay, but if I go to cd cd space dot and I'm back here and I go ls, there's no such thing over here called gamconfig. So let's try and do this now. Let's paste this in. So it says make directory and we're inside here. So we can obviously go into that directory if you want, or you can run it from here. So let's just see what this actually does first. Let's say make directory and nothing seems to have happened. So let's go and look at this. So if we go ls here you will see that there's now a gam config right there. Okay, so now if we go cd and then gam config and list what's inside there, there's nothing inside there. So that's cool. It's just a folder that has been made. Okay, add the following line, which is that, to one of the files based on your shell. So we are using zshrc. So if I now go into this and say, no, that, I would like to now put this inside that. Okay. And once again, I'm going to push Control X. It's going to say, do you want to save it? I'm going to say Y and then push Enter and then it saves it. So if you want to go and double check it again, you will be able to go in there and Control X will get you out again. So we've now added the following line into that. And depending on what shell you're using, if you're using different ones, obviously put it into that. Now it says issue the following command replacing file name with the file name that you edited. Okay, so if we go into this and copy that, okay, we are sort of like asking it to do a source of the file name. Now we've done a file name which is zshrc. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste that inside here. Okay, so if we go here, now we're going to do this and we're going to go into the terminal again, paste that, push enter. And that is basically just going to reload that file. It's going to say, where do we get everything from? Now, we need to make sure that the GAM configuration directory actually exists, and we're going to do it like this. Okay? So this, because it's a variable, should be able to run from anywhere on your computer in any sort of like folder structure. So if I now paste that in and say, I'm going to list all the folders that are in this variable structure, GAM config directory. If I push enter, it says 0. Okay, so we need to check that the gam config directory actually exists over here. And the command for this is this. So that doesn't work for me. What does work for me is to check the echo over here. So if we do an echo of a variable, if we go over here, it says this is the complete config directory. So now if you go into any of these, that is the config directory, and that is the same thing. So that's absolutely perfect. So we're now going to set a working directory. Okay, so the working directory is we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go and we say make a directory for users, admin, and then gam work. So now the reason why we're having a working directory is this. Working directories is where you can actually play around with stuff. You can have CSVs in there, you can have your script files in there, you can have a whole bunch of stuff, and you're not actually messing with the actual install of GAM or the config of GAM. This is going to be just whatever you want to do. So you can delete stuff out of here, you can copy and paste and do whatever stuff you want into here. This is actually the working directory. So let's go into here and let's paste it in. Just make the fonts a little bit bigger. So we are obviously going to take this over here, copy that, and replace the admin part over there. So make directory -p users /j gam work. So I'm going to copy on this, go back to here, push enter on that, and theoretically, if I list stuff now, we have got gam config over there, and we've got gam work over there. So that is great. So now I'm going to set an alias. Okay, you should set an alias to point to your gam, so you can operate from the users admin gam work directory, and aliases aren't available in script. So you may want to set a symlink instead. So if we go into this, and this was actually added over here. So if we go and look in the aliases of this, you will see that the alias for gam is pointing to that. So let's go here. And while we're talking about stuff, how do you know which terminal you're in Mac? I don't know if you know this, but if you go and say echo and say $0, and we spell echo correctly, it said I am in the ZHS terminal. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, what if you don't want to use the editor in the command line? What if you actually want to sort of like use a normal text editor? Well, you can do the same thing. You can say, let's just do here, let's go here, and instead of nano, which is what I've done for years, you can say open. And you can say open that, and it'll open as a text file in your default text editor. So if your default text editor is Visual Studio Code, you can do it in there. But you can also, instead of saying open there, you can say code in that, and it'll open in Visual Studio Code. So it depends on how you want to play with it. Anyway, so what we were looking for here is it says find this alias for gam, so there's alias gam, and point it to that place. So we've already done that. That was part of the install. Okay, so we've done all of that. We've done all of that. Issue the following command, replacing the file name with the name that you've edited, source, and we can do that. So let's just close this. And if you do any changes, you can just push this. It will reload it. So it will sort of like bring it up rather than closing a terminal and starting again. Okay. So I don't want to do a symlink because I've got an alias and it's perfect. So it now says initialize gam. This should be the first gam command executed. Okay. So we're going to copy this again. Okay. And we're going to grab Pauloger again, put it into there, and we're going to run this. So this will not be able to run if you don't have your alias correct. So holding thumbs that this actually works. Let's paste that in here. Gamconfig drive_dir users Pauloger gamwork verify. So before we do this, let's go into here. Let's go into me here. So let's go over here to go Finder and Settings. Let's say Sidebar shows me. And then let's go here. So if I'm going to myself and we go into this and we say, okay, what's under the gamwork? So if I go into gamwork, there's nothing. And if I go into the gamconfig, there's nothing. So just so that you know that. Okay, so I'm going to run this command. Let's push enter. It's then going to push all of this stuff into the gamconfig gam.config. So here is the folder. There's gamconfig, and these things were created. Now, right at the end, we're actually going to play around and open this with a text file. But all of these things inside here, you'll be able to see that you can actually edit them and play with them. And when you start getting more advanced, you can play with them. But I'm going to show you some fun little things just now. Okay, so that has now been done. It does all of this. And now we're going to verify if this was successful by running. Okay, and that says that we've got a whole bunch of stuff inside there. So now we're going to create a project with your local browser. Now, going back to the original terminal that we ran, it's got this over here. And this is the difference. It's sort of like you can start it from a new terminal if you want, but it actually has it over here. We are going to do a new Google API for GAM. We're going to do a new project. So if we go into this and we say, here's the project creation ID, and we go into this part over here, and we copy this, and we go to admin console, and let's paste that into here. What you'll see, and I can't hide it from you because even though I wanted to, I can't. There's a GAM7 that's been created already. Now that was created for the Windows lesson, so don't get confused by that. So all of these other things over here, I can't actually delete them. I can't sort of like start again. It's for, you can change the access for it, but you can't actually delete them. So we're going to go here and say configure new app, and we're going to search for this app over here. So I'm going to grab that whole thing and say copy, and I'm going to say search. It's going to find a thing called the GAM project creation app. Okay, there we go. And if you want, you can obviously just do certain OUs. You can you can click over here and you can go into certain OUs and say, I just want to do the school, or I just want to do the teachers if you want to, but I'm going to do the whole of my domain or my tenant. And I say continue. Okay. It then says, please make sure that you put it on trusted. Okay. So the other ones that I actually set up before, you can go into them and you can say that the access is not that they're not trusted anymore. They could be blocked. So I'm going to say trusted. I'm going to say continue, and I'm going to finally say finish. If you're working at a school and you've got anyone under the age of 18, you will be able to look at this and you will have to confirm that you know that you're dealing with people under the age of 18, and there's a whole bunch of things you need to go along with that. Anyway, so here is this GAM project creation that has been made. And if we go over here and we push enter, it's now popping up again. And it says, do you want to allow this? And I'm going to say yes, allow. It then carries on this side. It says the authentication flow has completed. Okay, it's now creating the project, GAM project. Depending on the amount of, depending on the speed of your internet, depending on the speed of your computer, and depending on how fast Google's feeling that day, this might take 10 seconds. It might take up to a minute. Cool. Okay, so now that it says, please could you go to this link over here. So I'm going to grab that whole link. I'm going to copy that. And we're going to make a new tab here, paste that in, and go for that. Now, depending on how your Google Cloud is set up, you will see either get started here, which I'm saying this, but if you've got a create clients option, then skip down to number 14, which is down over here. Okay, so we are going to say get started. Okay, and what are we going to call the app name? Well, I'm going to call it GAM7, and I'm going to call it Mac. User support email, I'm going to do admin@taming G Suite. I'm going to say next. Then it says, please make sure that you're choosing internal, and then under contact information, enter an email address there. So I'm going to say internal, next, contact. Just going to put mine in here. Okay, next, and then finally finish, continue, and create. So that's the first part of that one over here. As you can see here, once you've done all of that, then we're now going to go to the clients in the left-hand column. So let's go to clients. Okay, and I'm going to say create a client. We're going to choose desktop app over here, and I'm going to call it GAM7, and let's just call it Mac OS again. Let's say create. Now, another reason why I suggest having a text file open is because, as you can see, there's this very stern warning here that says that if you don't copy your client secret from here, what's going to happen is that your client secret is not going to be able to be seen after you do this, and you'd have to start this process again. Not the whole process, but just the OAuth creation. Okay, so let's go into here, and let's say this is client ID, and I'll paste that there. And then I'm going to do client secret. I'm just going to copy that. Paste that there. And finally, I'm just going to push OK. Now, you'll see that it's been created over there. Over here on the right-hand side, we are looking for the client ID at the bottom. So I'm going to copy that. Enter client secret. Enter. And now what it's going to do is it says, okay, we need to now make this as a trusted app. So let's go into this again. Let's copy this, and this is where we were before, which is exactly the same as this. So if I go into this, click on configure new app, and then search for this one. So let's go to this, copy that, configure a new app, search for this app. Now, instead of it being a project creation app like it was previously, this is just GAM7 macOS, which is what we set up. So I'm going to say continue. Okay, and I'm going to say trust it. So that's basically you're trusting yourself. You're telling Google that I know what I'm doing and I'm trusting myself. Okay, I'm going to say finish, and I say confirm. Okay, all of this says life is good, and then once you are finished at the bottom, we're going to push enter. And theoretically, it should work. It says your GAM project is created and ready to use. Okay, proceed to authentication steps. Are you ready to authorize GAM to perform Google Workspace management? I'm going to say yes. Okay. Now, as you can see, these are the APIs that I created earlier, or that I looked at earlier. So there's certain things like business account management, which doesn't have a star next to it, but Calendar does, and Chrome browser has a star next to it. Certain things are supports read only. So I'm not going through these. But if you don't need anything else like reseller and things like that, then don't enable them. It makes the whole thing slower, one. And two, if you just say enable all of it, the likelihood is that the whole thing will fail. So pick what you actually need. And if you're cool with that, then we're going to say continue to authorization by pushing C. We're going to push C, enter, and we'll open it up over here. It says GAM7 macOS is going to access this. We're going to say continue. And now, if you've dealt with Google before, you obviously have seen this before. This is what GAM is going to have access to. It's going to have access to every single one of these things. And every single one of these things relates to the ones that have the star next to it. So if you don't know what you're doing, that's what it's referring to. Now, we don't have email audits or pub or reseller, So none of that will be over here, but I'm going to say cool, and I'm going to say allow, and it now says that it's verified. That's cool. Are you ready to authorize GAM to manage your workspace user data and settings? Say yes, please. Okay, enter the email address of a regular Google Workspace user. So I've got one here called Michael at tamingGsuite.com, and I'm going to push enter. Now, this is going to fail the first time, and you'll see that this happens. But there's certain things that you have to pass. You have to be able to pass that your time on your computer is less than 1 second away from what Google expects your time to be. If it's way out, it will fail. Okay. But as you can see, everything else is failing over here, which is perfect. And what we're going to do is we're then going to add permissions now to actually go into that. There are, before we carry on, there are a couple that actually pass over here. And it says here, GAM should never have access to these for Michael that. So all 3 of these ones over here are passing, and they are supposed to be not have access. So that's great. So now we're going to go to this link, copy that. Let's make a new one. Let's paste it in there. What you'll see is it's going to create this with all of these API scopes down here. There's calendar, there's chat. So all the things that we ticked off over here, there's 37 of them. All these things that are failing, we're now going to say, I authorize that. So confirm. Okay. And it now says, are you ready to authorize at the bottom over here? I'm going to say yes. Okay. And now it's going to check one more time. And theoretically, all of these should pass. If it doesn't pass immediately, then just do yourself a favor, wait 30 seconds and then run it again. It should pass. Just sometimes Google takes a little bit longer, but doesn't take longer than like 30 seconds. As you can see, all of these are passing, which is great. It is now saying that all of this is configured. This is what GAM we're running. This is the Python version we're running, which we obviously had to install earlier. This is the path that it's done. This is where the config is. This is the current time. Your time differs from that by less than 1 second, which is great. All of this fun stuff is there. Okay. And it says, please restart your terminal shell, or to get started right away, run this. So if you just copy this, paste that in there and push enter, you should be up and running now to actually get this done. So let's go back into this how to install and see what we've got. So we've got this created project. We have created the config. We have done the OAuth. We've done all of this, and it happened automatically on the Mac, and it happens automatically on the Linux version as well. But on the Windows one, you kind of have to sort of like do it a couple of steps, and it's a bit more painful. Okay. This was one where he said Michael as a regular user. There's the failing. There's the passing. And finally, at the bottom over here, we've got the GAM config. Now, I spoke to you about this right at the beginning. We can actually update certain things. Now, if you're only dealing with yourself, you're only dealing with your own company, then you've got a custom ID, you've got a domain, and you've got a time zone. So if you actually set those up, it reduces the amount of API calls, and sort of like it makes it run a bit faster. If you put the custom ID then. If you've got your domain in here, you're allowed to, if you sort of like you're running an update on something, you don't have to put at domain.com. You can sort of like to say Michael. And the time zone obviously says, if you run a time zone, it will obviously give you the stuff in your local time zone. So what we're going to do is we're going to run this over here and say gam info domain, push enter, and it should give us a lot of our information. Okay, so it says here, there's my custom ID, there's my primary domain, when did we create it, all the stuff. User counts as of this time is 19 user counts. So this over here, the custom ID, if I actually just copy that and I go in to gamconfig, and here's my gamconfig that we're looking at, and that's what we're talking about. We right click on this and say open with TextEdit, increase the size. If you go down here, you'll see a couple of things. And one of the things that we're looking for is client ID. So client custom ID is there. I'm going to paste that in there. And my primary domain is this. So I'm going to copy that. And if I go down here to domain, pop that in there. And then obviously if you want to do other things, you can do that. I'm just going to save this, does that. And if I run this again, it's a good Theoretically, it shouldn't break anything, but I just want to double check. Watching this on YouTube, please put it down in the comments and we'll get it up and running. But if you do have any other questions about how to do it in Linux, how to do it on Windows, go and look at those lessons. So thanks so much.